Hey guys, how you going? My name is Dom, and in today's video we're going to be creating a CSV viewer using HTML, CSS and of course JavaScript. Okay, so the main reason why I'm creating this video is because many of you guys have requested me to do so right after my tutorial on converting an HTML table to a CSV file. So if you haven't seen that video, I suggest you check it out if you're interested, but this right here is the final product for today's tutorial. So as we can see here, we have this HTML table which of course was generated through a CSV file. So as we can see right up here, I can go ahead and I can choose a CSV file to display. So for example, I can choose another sample.csv, and now we can see the data has of course changed. So this technique right here, it can be used in the form of this, where you choose a file, but you can also perform an AJAX request or a fetch request to get your data, or even a basic JavaScript string. You can pass through the functions here to of course generate this table. Okay, so I just want to say that we're going to be using a library called parse. So this library right here allows you to parse CSV files, and of course it's probably better if we use a library dedicated to parsing CSV rather than trying to create that ourselves. So I'll leave a link to this right here in the description. You can either download the source files directly or you can install it through npm if you are using Webpack or something like that. So you can just go quite simply npm install parse if you want to go that route. I will be just quite simply including the minified JS file for this video, so that's also quite straightforward to do. Okay, so let's just go back inside this tab right here and begin from scratch to of course create the table CSV viewer. So let's go inside the text editor, and I've got this currently. So we can see it's quite a straightforward index.html file with essentially nothing going on inside of it. And of course on the left here, I've got a directory called data containing my CSV sample files, which of course we're going to be using to test our solution. Okay, and right here also I've got a lib directory, and inside the library or the lib directory I've got parse minified, which I downloaded from the website in the description. Okay, so the very first thing to do in the index.html is just to include the parse library. So let's go down here and say script for source, and we can just say /lib and then parse.min.js. Okay, and now we're also going to be creating both the input field and also the actual table itself. So I might just create the table in the body for now. We can add the input field a bit later on. So let's make a new HTML table right here with an ID of something like CSV root. Okay, so the way it's going to work is essentially we're going to have a JavaScript class which wraps or takes in this table element, and then we can call various methods on that class to of course insert and display our data, and it's going to modify this underlying table. Okay, so speaking of that, let's actually go ahead now and create our class. Okay, so let's just save this and then make a new directory right on this side here called JS, and inside the JS directory let's make a file called table.csv.js. Okay, and now from within inside here we can just essentially create a class. Okay, so I do want to just also make a new file here called main.js, and this one is going to be our main JavaScript file, which we're going to be including on this HTML file. So let's just go ahead now and say script for source, then we can say ./JS and then main.js, and since we're going to be taking advantage of JavaScript modules, we are going to have to type right inside here type is equal to module. That way we can import the table CSV class from within this file using the ES6 import export syntax. Okay, so let's get started now on actually creating our class to actually display our CSV data. Okay, so within inside here, we're going to be saying export default and then class. Okay, and we're essentially just exporting a single object, of course, the class. Okay, so in the constructor, we can just say right here, we can take through the root table element. Okay, and we can just say right up here some JS doc. We can simply just say param HTML table element as the type, and we can just say root right here, and we can say the table element which will display the CSV data. Display the CSV data. Okay, cool. And then we can just remove this. It is quite self-explanatory, and we can say this.root is equal to root. So now let's just save this and then go back inside the main JS file, and we can quite simply just say import. We can import table CSV from and then /table CSV just like this. Okay, so now we can go down here and we can say const table root is equal to document.query selector. Okay, we can pass through here the ID of, I believe it was called CSV root. Okay, so I'll copy this and paste it inside here. Okay, and now we can just say down below this, we can say const table CSV, okay, is equal to a new instance of our table CSV class, which of course we imported just up here. So we can pass through the root HTML table element. So we can pass through here table root. Okay, so now I just want to go back inside the constructor and just say, for example, console log I am constructed or something like that. Okay, so now I'm going to save this and then refresh the browser, and right here we get nothing. Okay, so I did forget to add right here just the .js extension for this, so make sure you include that. Let's try again. And now we get I am constructed. So of course we have our instance of the table CSV. Okay, so now let's add a new method inside this class to actually set the table header. So I'm just going to remove this right here, then make a new method called setHeader just like this, and this is going to take through our header columns. So we can say header columns just like this. Now I am going to be copy and pasting a JS comment for this, so I'll just copy this right here and paste it right here. So basically we can see right here this function or this method is going to take through an array of strings, and that array is going to be our list of headers for the table. Okay, so we can just say right inside here this.root, okay, .insert adjacent HTML, and we're going to be injecting HTML into our table element right here. So of course, being the table head, we need a t-head element. Okay, so let's go back inside here and we can say insert adjacent HTML. We can pass through here after begin. That way it gets inserted right under or as the first child. Okay. And we can say for the string, we're going to be using ES6 template strings here. So using the backticks on the keyboard, we can now produce a multi-line string. Inside here, we can quite simply just say, t-head, just like this, to create our t-head element. And then within inside here, we can then use something like this to essentially just say inside here, header columns. Okay, so our array of strings, we can say .map. Okay, so .map is going to take each element in the array and then essentially just change it. Okay, so we can say .map and then pass through here text. Now text refers to each one of our individual headers. Okay, then we can just say something like this. We can say th then pass through here text, just like that, and then of course closing up the th table header element. And then we can then quite easily just say dot join, and then pass through here just an empty string. So essentially, I may have missed something right here. I'll just double check this. So header columns.map got the text. Yeah, so I'm not too sure why the syntax highlighting is a bit weird there, but that's okay. That should be working perfectly fine. So we are simply just essentially having our list of table headers joined by an empty string. So I can show you this result quite easily by then going back inside the main.js, and then we can quite simply just say table CSV dot set header. Okay, and then pass through here an array of strings. So we can say, for example, ID, then name, and then age as an example. Okay, let's now save this and then refresh the browser, and we can see right here we get null. Let's figure out why. So this dot root refers to our HTML element. That is perfectly fine. Of course. Okay, so let's put a hash right there to actually grab the ID from our table. Okay, let's try it again now and refresh, and we get this right here. So we can see we have the headers all set up. Now inside here, we can see we have the tr, the th, and the tr and all of the ths. Okay. The TRs got added automatically by the web browser, so to be honest, that probably shouldn't be a thing, and we should probably actually include that. So that's my mistake. Let's just go back inside here and include the TR for that right there. Okay, let's try it again. Refresh, and we should see the exact same result. So we get the exact same thing right there. So I hope it's clear how we are building the HTML for the table head. We are simply just creating a new th for each one of our strings, which we pass through as an array in the setHeader method. So the way the data is going to be displayed is going to be a very similar situation. So let's do the exact same thing right now for the actual table body. Okay, so let's go down here, and we're going to be saying set body. This will take through the actual data, and this right here is going to be a multi-dimensional array of strings. Okay, so I'm just going to copy the comment once again, which I wrote previously. Okay, and we can see right here the data is an array of an array of strings. Okay, so we can say inside here, firstly, we're going to be saying const rows HTML is equal to data.map once again. Now, of course, row right here, this row is going to be going to represent a single array of data, okay, or single row of data, right? So we can say right here row, and for each row we're going to simply just return a very similar thing to what we did right up here. So we can say return using ES6 template strings once again. We're going to be saying table row, okay. Then with inside here, we can just expand this on one more line. So let's do this right here, just to make it a bit clearer what's actually happening. Okay, right, inside here we can then just quite simply say row dot map, have the text once again, because now we are looping through each one of our individual data points or columns inside the individual row. Okay, so that's a row, and this text right here is our column. So we can say text, and we can just say right here, similar to above, using ES6 template strings once again, we can just say td, just like this, and pass through here text. Okay, and then once again, we can join the array by an empty string just like that. So now I might just console.log the rows HTML to see how it's actually going to work, and then let's go back inside the main.js and actually pass through some data. So we can say table csv.set body and pass through here our 2D array of strings. So we can say an array just like this, and then inside here, our nested array for each individual row. So we can say, for example, let's just do for the ID, I don't know, 4,500. We can say for the name, let's just make this Dom, and the age, let's just do 35. And let's just put this on a new line to make it a bit clearer to read. Okay, and let's just keep all three the same, doesn't matter too much. And we can just save this right here and refresh, and we can see in the console we get something like this. So of course the HTML are slightly hard to read because of all the white space in the JavaScript file, but as you can see, if I just expand it, hopefully we can see we get a table row, okay, and then a TD for each one of our individual rows. Okay, I might actually change this for demonstration. Let's make this dcode, and let's just do 67 and maybe 8,000 as the ID. Save this, refresh, and we can see here we of course get the 800 and the dcode row right here. Okay, so we've got our table rows. Let's now actually append that to our table body, which we're also going to be creating. So let's go back inside here now, and in this table CSV class, we can quite simply now just do this.root.insert adjacent HTML, this time saying before end. That way it gets inserted after our table head. Okay, we're going to be inserting right here, going to be inserting t-body. Okay, so t-body, and then we can just say essentially for each individual rows HTML, so each one of our arrays right here, we're going to then just say rows HTML dot join by an empty string. Okay, so now let's save this and refresh one more time, and we can see right there we get the data being populated within the table. Okay, so that is going to be the chunk of today's video. Now we are going to be creating a new function to do this in one go. So essentially, want to be able to just say, once we have the table CSV, want to actually say something like table CSV.update and pass through here the headers and also the body as a second argument. That way, we can keep calling this method right here, and it's always going to clear and then reinsert the data in the table. So let's implement that right now. So let's go back inside the table CSV and make a new method for clearing the table currently. So we can say right here, clear as the method name. We're going to be saying quite simply this.root.innerHTML is equal to an empty string, and that's going to quite simply just remove all of the data, including the headers, from the table itself. So we can just say right here, clears all the contents of the table, including the header, something like that. Okay, and now we can quite easily make a new method called update. So update is going to take through the data and also the header columns. So we can say here data and then header columns, and let's give header columns, let's just give it an actual empty array as a default. That way, if your CSV doesn't actually contain any header data, we can just pass through the data itself. So now it's going to be as easy as just simply calling these methods right here. So we're going to first say this.clear to clear the current table. Then we can say this.setHeader, pass through here your header columns. And we can then say this.setBody, and once again pass through the data which comes through from here. So realistically, I probably should be calling this parameter body instead of data, but it's not going to matter too much. So now I'm going to simply copy and paste some more JS doc right up here, just to say, yep, I'm going to be taking through the data and then also the header columns. Okay, so now let's go back inside here, and we can say table CSV .update, then pass through here our data. So I'll pass through the exact same data as before, just like that, and then for the header, we can just pass through ID, name, and then age as we did earlier. So now, let's get rid of this and then save and refresh, and we should get the exact same result, and we do right there. If we want to not pass through a header, it should be quite straightforward. Let's save this and then refresh, and we get something like this. As we can see, it's still working perfectly fine. Okay, cool. So now let's go back inside here, and I'm now going to just be copying and pasting a couple of CSS styles for the table in order to make it look a bit better. Okay, so I'm going to just go in my index.html right here, make a new style tag, and within inside here, I'll just copy and paste some data or some CSS, which I wrote a bit earlier. So something like this, of course. I don't want to get into too much detail on the CSS in today's video, as it is not really relevant to, of course, the JavaScript and the actual, CSV viewer. But that right there is my CSS. Just putting a few border radius, border collapse, things like that. Font family, bold 14px, and my dcode green color, and of course more things along those lines. So purely aesthetic purposes. Let's save this right here and refresh, and of course now it looks something like this. Okay, so that's going to be the CSS. Now moving on to essentially putting together each one of our components, that is going to be actually parsing the CSV information or the data. Okay, so in order to achieve this, let's just firstly make a new input field right down here. We can say input with a type of file. Let's give it an ID of something like, let's just say CSV file input. Okay, and now we can just say style right here, and we can just say something like padding bottom at 15px, just to give it some space between, of course, the table and of course the input field right there. So now saving this and refreshing, we get something like this. Okay, so let's head back inside the main.js file now, and I want to show you right here, actually first off, that back in the browser, if I was to say papa just like this, okay, we can see right there the papa parse library has been loaded. So if you don't get this right here, make sure to check your papa parse install, and just make sure it's actually there and present for you to use. Okay, so let's go back inside here now, and we're going to be inside this main.js file. We can make a new constant right here for the actual input element itself. So we can say const CSV file input is equal to document.query selector, passing through this time CSV file input. Okay, so now we can just go down here and we can say CSV file input dot add event listener. When the input field gets changed, or we actually choose a new file, okay, we're going to be running this function right here. So inside this function, now I just want to remove this chunk of code right down here just for now, or permanently, I guess. And inside here, we can actually parse our CSV data, which we chose from the input field itself. So to achieve this, we're going to be saying papa.parse. Okay, so the parse method is going to, of course, parse a CSV file or CSV contents. So we're going to pass through here an actual file object. Okay, so we can say CSV file input dot files at index 0. Okay, so this right here basically is just saying once we choose a file from the browser, right, just like this, this input object right here has a property called files, and it's an array of files which we chose. At index 0 is going to be the file which we chose. Okay, so I might just actually console.log that out for you guys, for those of you who don't actually know how this works. So I can just say CSV file input.files at index 0, just like this, just to see what it actually looks like. Okay, and then right here, as a second argument to our parse method or function, we can just say, quite simply, delimiter is equal to a comma, okay, and skip empty lines equal to true. So these are two options for PapaPa's library, just to say, you know, our delimiter is going to be a comma, because of course in CSV you can do tabs or basically anything you want, but of course comma is the most common. And of course skip empty lines is just going to simply skip empty lines when parsing. Okay, so we can then lastly here just say complete, and this right here is going to contain a function giving us our results of the actual parse. So we can say results just like this, and now we can quite simply, just for now, say console.log and pass through our results. So now let's save this right here, and we can just refresh the browser. And then we're going to be choosing one of those sample CSV files. So I'll choose sample.csv right here. And we can see right there, as the first thing here, we have the actual file object. So we can see here, sample.csv, PapaPa's takes through this object quite comfortably, and it's going to parse it. Okay, and then our result right here is an object containing 3 properties. We have errors, we have just a bunch of metadata, and also, most importantly, the actual data itself in an array. So we can see right here, all of this data matches our implementation for the table CSV class. Okay, so with that being said, it's going to be quite easy now to just simply call our methods as we did earlier. Okay, so let's remove this console.log, and we can quite simply just say table csv.update, pass through here for the data. We can just say results.data.slice and then pass through index 1. So basically this right here takes our data array, so of course this one right here, it takes our data array and it says slice number 1, which means skip the first element in the array, because of course we have right here the first element is the actual header, so we don't want the header to appear in the data. So skip the first element and select from index 1 all the way down to index number 201, which is just down here, or 200, sorry. Okay, so that's what slice does. Slice just takes up an array, takes a chunk of an array, in this case here from 1 to 200, the rest of the lines. So slice at index 1, and as a second argument here, this will be our headers. So for the headers, quite easy, we can just say results.data at index 0, of course 0 referring to the first row, which contains our header information. So now we can just save this right here and we are basically done. Let's refresh the browser and then choose a sample.csv file, and we can see right there we have everything working as we expect it to. Okay, so that's how it's going to work now. Obviously, you know, this sort of this implementation here of the update method on the table CSV class is going to be quite flexible. So you can use it for basically anything. So you may choose to, you know, retrieve a CSV file using Ajax or the Fetch API, and then just simply pass through your data into the PapaPa's method here. So I'll just show you this as an example. So let's go back inside the browser here. In the documentation for PapaPa's, we can see right here, you can also take through the actual CSV as a string. So instead of passing through a file here, you can just pass through your string variable containing the CSV contents. Okay, or it even has a method to you know, do a request itself to actually retrieve the data. Okay, so you know, there's many different ways you can go about this, but essentially our actual table is going to be quite flexible in you know, having methods available to, of course, update the actual data. So that right there is how to create a table CSV viewer using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I'll be leaving all of the code for this in the description below if you want to check that out. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you later.